Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, Servitisation for a Green Transition, the Journey Ahead for Circular Business Model Financing, organized by the Efficiency as a Service Consortium. Thank you all for tuning in. We're very excited today to dive into this topic. And before we get started, I will make a few opening statements. So this webinar will be recorded, and in the upcoming days, we will share this recording with you. As well, other documentation such as the presentations and the Q&A that will happen today. Excuse me. Today's webinar is organized by the EaaS consortium, which is supported through the European Union's Horizon 2020 program for research and innovation. The project is being carried out by Agoria from Belgium, EaaS from Spain, BASE from Switzerland, and EIT Energy. And the goal of the EaaS project is to accelerate the adoption of energy efficient solutions through servitization business model innovation. Among other characteristics, this is a business model which can realign incentives among stakeholders to stimulate energy efficiency performance over time, circular practices, and reduce barriers for clients to increase the accessibility of green solutions. One of our activities includes the organizations of webinars, such as we are doing today, both to international and national audiences. And today we are looking at the final edition of the webinar series already. Additionally, we have developed a toolkit specifically for technology and service providers that are interested in deploying the EaaS business model. So for those in the audience interested in deploying the model, please find our download link on our website and have a look. On our website, you can also find 7 additional webinars that have been recorded. Just 4 weeks ago, we discussed the perspectives of practitioners on the circular economy and servitization with SystemIQ, Deloitte, Danfoss, and ETOP Lighting. And today, we want to dive deeper into this topic, specifically looking at the financing challenges that come with deploying circular and servitization business models. So I will be your host today. My name is Arna Nijrolder. I'm working with Energy as a business analyst. And today our moderator will be Dimitris Karamitsos, working with BASE as a senior energy efficiency business developer. And the topics for today are as followed: challenges and opportunities in financing circular business models, overcoming the roadblocks in circular economy financing, and successful examples and ways ahead. Today's event will be consisting of 2 sessions. In the first session, 2 of our guest speakers, who I'll introduce in the following slide, will present on the listed topics. And this is followed by a brief window for Q&A. And subsequently, 2 of our other guest speakers will introduce themselves, and then we will have time for elaborate panel discussion and a second window for Q&A. So it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers of today, starting going from left to right. Christian Levy, Deputy Managing Director of Econocom Lease at Econocom Belgium Luxembourg. Christian is an executive board member of the Belgian Lease Association and has a career of over 30 years in financing and leasing. Econocom supports companies and governments in the implementation of as-a-service business models, product-service combination, and leasing solutions. Dirk Verbrugge, our second guest speaker, is the Regional Director of the CFO Center at Belgium and part-time CFO. Dirk is an experienced senior-level executive with an extensive experience in finance and sustainability, as well as multinational environments and in SMEs, such as at Toyota Material Handling. Dirk is active in sustainable finance and specialized in circular economy and finance funding with state-of-the-art new circular business models and financing methods. So very excited to hear from Dirk and Christian in the first presentation. Continuing with our other guest speakers, Wouter de Wolf is joining us, Marketing Manager B2B at Signify, famous for the Light as a Service proposition of Signify. Wouter has worked at the intersection of innovation, sustainability, and B2B marketing for more than 15 years, in various positions at Berenschot, Philips, and Signify. And he has always loved developing and marketing new sustainable B2B propositions. Fourth, Samuel Allison, International Program Manager at Société Générale Equipment Finance. Samuel holds an asset finance industry experience spanning 13 years, 10 years of those at Société Générale, equipment finance across a number of different roles, and his current responsibility lies at the overall management and coordination of global finance programs for partners spanning the green energy and healthcare markets, where demand for financial products that go beyond equipment leases or embedded leases have opened up new opportunities and ways of working. So thank you all for joining us today, to each of you. And before I hand over the stage to Christian and Dirk, we would like to do a small poll. Through that poll, to get to know our audience a little bit better and to also learn how familiar our audience is with servitization. So the first question that you're seeing is actually specifically for those of you representing technology and service providers. And the second question is to be answered by those of you working as financiers. So if you could please share your answers, we would would love to hear from you. So as you're all looking at which option is best for you. I will take the time also to ask you to please type in any questions during the presentations in the chat function, so we can discuss those at the appropriate time today. And if not, we will tackle them by email after the event. So Dimitris, you're signaling okay. This is my part. After me, I can give the stage to Dirk and Christian. Should we wait a little longer, or I think we have all the answers, right? Great. So
okay.
Yes, and it's quite interesting. We see a few people. 30% do not know what EaaS is, 60% are thinking about it or in the process to implementing, 10% already implementing. And on the financing side, 70% have no idea how to finance EaaS projects. So Christian and Dirk and Sam, very timely to have your involvement here today. And 30% are in the course to finance these. So many thanks to everyone for participating in the poll.
Now I will end my slideshow and hand it over to Christian.
Okay, good.
Excuse me. Stop share. Now you can start. You can take over, Christian and Dirk.
So the slides are shown. Okay, yes.
Do you see them? Yes.
Okay.
Do you see the slides?
Yeah.
Yes. So,
yes. Okay. Good. Excellent.
First slide, please, Christian.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, let's say further on. Yes.
Yes.
With the advantages of
So we made already the introduction of Dirk. Also mine. Just a quick word on Econocom. Econocom is a digital general contractor. It means that we provide companies and governments for distribution of IT equipment, services around IT equipment, and financing solutions. We are a company listed on the stock market on the Euronext in Brussels. We are active in 16 countries, nearly 9,000 people, 2.7 billion revenue last year. We have been working on the market for the last 50 years. We manage something like 7 million IT and other technological assets, and we manage also at the end of their lease contract something like 500,000 assets per year. So I leave the word now to Dirk.
Okay, thank you, Christian, and thanks, Arno, for the introduction. So yeah, the result of the poll, they don't surprise me. First, I was surprised when I saw what, let's say, the knowledge and the awareness was in the market concerning sustainability and circular business models. Because after all, I think 1 year or 2 years ago, the Club of Rome celebrated their 50 years anniversary. So we are busy 50 years to become more sustainable, and still we are in an awareness phase. So, okay, and after awareness, we should do more training, and then we can go really fast with implementing things. So what are the advantages of an as a service model? Because we know it's a very complex business model. It's very difficult to finance. There are a lot of roadblocks. So why the hell should we do it? Yeah, it's very simple: to create value. Let's say not only value for the company, economic value, but also value for the society, ecological value, social value. And circular business models are really the ultimate of sustainability impact improvement. According to a study of Accenture, they calculated that circular life value creation in circular life cycle can be to 7 times higher than one-off sales. It depends about the business case, depends about the industries, but yeah, it can go from 2-3 times more to a lot more value creation. That all depends about the scope that your circular business model is. So the more value is created, because we are not only producing goods or services and selling it, but through the full life cycle of the product, we will create added value. We do maintenance, repairs, financing, insurance, second-hand business, scrapping, transport, all your things that can help the customer and to create value. And in that way, yeah, the total value creation is much higher. So in the end, it's much better for the customer and the society, and also much better for the company. So it's a no-brainer that we should do it, but of course it's not so easy. So it creates more value for the company. So, and that's what we're all about. So Christian, you have still some more points to add to all the advantages?
Yeah, on the practical side and the advantages for the company, it improves customer relationship by doing more deep involvement in the processes. It allows you to extend your market, to target new markets. And in fact, you unburden the customer, you make his life easier. You are the single point of contact to solve all problems, and he knows who is responsible, and you are responsible as a supplier. It gives also more flexibility in the way you can manage the assets, you can manage the services, and also by giving predictable flows, and you are responsible of the satisfaction of your customer. You have also time to improve the quality of your products, the quality of your services, the efficiency of the services, and at the end, indeed, you create ecological value by reducing the number of assets and by extending the life of your assets, and you create value for the customer for his quality of service, for his comfort, and you create value for yourself by predictable flows, which is good also for the investors. If you make it simple on a diagram, in the yellow curve, you have the cost that can be involved with a project. The deep blue is the cash flows that are to be paid over time, to invest at start about the assets, and then over time to have planned maintenance costs, to have maybe unplanned corrective actions and repairs. But at the end of the day, you transform these variable streams and variable satisfaction by the upward dotted line, which is a constant and high level of satisfaction, for a price which is the light blue below, which can be a fixed price. Some of the companies we've met, and also last time ETAP, when they were presenting their business model, they show that they are offering stable and fixed prices. There are models, of course, when they are more pay-per-use of variable price. But anyway, the customer knows exactly what he pays. Either is it fixed, either it's a pay per unit, and also a high level of satisfaction. Dirk, on your side.
Yes, so thanks, Michel. So we speak about value creation, and but what does it mean in financial terms? So a bit of finance now. So how do we calculate the value of a company? Which is the most common valuation method? It's you take the recurring normalized EBITDAs, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Then you multiply it with what we call a multiplier, and a multiplier can go from 3 to 4 for small companies we are not so liquid, to 14, 15 when you have bigger companies and have almost technical, but you can all go close to multipliers of 20, 25, all depends about your, let's say, quality of the company. There you have to subtract your normalized net debts, and that's your company value. So what is the red word? It's recurring EBITDA. It's let's say, as Christian said, we are creating stable added values. There you create recurring revenues with recurring EBITDAs, and that is creating a lot of value. In the multiplier, you have also the point that you have IP, intellectual knowledge, that you have a good reputation of your company, and sustainability and circular business models is all about reputation. So yeah, let's say again, why should you do more sustainable business or circular business? Yeah, in order to create more value for your company and for society. Yes, next please. So as I get recurring business, recurring EBITDA is value creation. The long-term relationship with the customer due to high value creation for the customer results in recurring EBITDAs. Circular business is one-off sales multiplied a lot. I was for 18 years of the folk truck business. When we sold a reach truck, it was 45,000 euro, and with a long-term service contract of 60 months, we got 60 times 1,500 feet per month. It's a 90,000 over the life cycle, and then we still have at the residual value that we could create and sell it off after a 5 years period, because the truck was still in the hands of Toyota, and perhaps a residual value of, for instance, 20% is still 9,000 or 10,000. So in this case, it's more multiplied with 2, 3. So, and why? Because in the long-term rental fee, it was not only the forklift truck sales price in it, but also an all-in service contract, insurance, financing, and in that way we were having a much more total invoice sales value when we did long-term rental contracts. Yes. Next.
Yes. So next to the importance of getting as a service for the supplier, the question then is, why should financial institution finance this kind of model? First of all, because as you know, and I will not speak about all as a service models that you have heard about it, like non-asset based, like the Spotify and so on, but also asset based. There are many examples. A financial institution will find new business opportunities there, additional volume to help customer evolve in the right direction to improve their footprint, also find new customers, create recurring business, not only a one-time loan, but you will have recurring flows over the future, creating partnerships with suppliers, innovate and differentiate from other financial institutions, positively contribute to the green transition through financing the customers, but also improve your own KPIs, because I will speak a little bit about it later, but the European Union is now obliging companies in the European Union to report about their footprint. That's the non-financial reporting directive. And of course, the financial institutions also have to report and to show that they are getting greener and greener, and that the way they finance the economy and the way they finance companies has a positive impact on the carbon footprint. So basically, companies, financial institutions will decrease their financing to oil and gas, for example, and will increase their financing of more green and more sustainable businesses. So the way it goes is that as everyone is obliged to be greener, of course, the financial institution will want to be greener themselves, will help their customers to be more sustainable, so that they have a future-proof portfolio and abandon step by step the classical linear financing methodology. On the supplier side, I leave again the word to Dirk.
Yes, let's say, as already indicated, the circular business models are very difficult to finance, and but we have also, of course, solutions, but it's still a difficulty, as I can say. Perhaps the second point is the most important, is the significant lack of knowledge. Let's say entrepreneurs, banks, yeah, all the stakeholders involved are still lacking knowledge, apparently, and they think it's still complex. It's not a normal way of financing. It's not a normal way of doing business. So that's the first point, lack of knowledge. And the second point is lack of financing capacity. Yeah, we don't get the money to get it financed. So, and why is it? Because the ownership, normally when you sell your product, you sell it and the ownership is transferred and you get your money and you don't need additional financing, the job is done. But when you offer a product as a service, yeah, let's say that means that your business model is put more on the financial pressure, because you have to put it on the balance sheet, because you keep the asset in your ownership, in your properties, until the end of the life cycle. So, and that gives a big burden on your balance sheet. Afterwards, we will explain what are the problems of that. Also, yeah, let's say instead of getting all your money when you sell a product, you will get your money over a lifetime of 3, 5, 7, 10 years. And also your invoice sales is dropping. So for the classical entrepreneurs, the sales-oriented guys, they say, oh, I had, for instance, a 500 million euro sales company with invoice sales. It could be dropped with divided by 10, because you're only selling your monthly fees or your rental fees. So that can be a psychological problem also. Because you put it on your balance sheet, you reduce your solvency, and that's also a problem of your results in a lack of financing capacity. You don't get your money in one time, so you have an increased and extended debtor risk. You have to see that you manage it properly. That asks also for extra and complex administration. You have really to manage your product over all the life cycle of the product. So in that way, it needs sophisticated, integrated ERP systems. Otherwise, yeah, afterwards you will see it won't be scalable neither. Yes. Next, please.
Yes, so exactly. If we summarize, there are profit and loss and balance sheet impact. You will divide your revenue. If you transfer massively from the sale model to the as a service model, the first year and the second year, you will have a significant drop. of your revenue. Your balance sheet will explode if you keep all of those assets on your balance sheet. So you have less revenue, maybe at start, not more profit, a heavier balance sheet on the asset side. You need to finance with debt, and reducing your revenue and increasing your debt. Of course, all bankers will look at it in a very prudent way. So we have to find ways to let's say, avoid that obstacles. And indeed, on the admin and invoicing and processing side, you will have more work by doing the invoicing yourself over a longer period, and you carry the debtor risk.
So all the roadblocks we indicated are very important, but the most difficult matter is that it's not scalable. Your finance capacity is not scalable. And in order to have, let's say, also as Christian said, if you manage the life cycle of a product, of a service, you can improve your quality, you can improve your efficiency, but you need scale for that and you need volume. But because you put all your investments, let's say the value of the product on your balance sheet, it's not scalable. So for instance, in Holland, we have let's say a really circular business company. As a good example, bundles. They have the model pay as you use a washing machine. So when you have 1,000 customers, you have to put 1,000 washing machines on the balance sheet. When it's around 1,000 per washing machine, normally it's a cost. Okay, this is an expensive washing machine, so it's 1 million. So, and if normally asset-based financing is the best financing method, because that's the reason also why Christian's here, that leasing and operational lease is the best way to finance it. But still, sometimes 25% of let's say the asset has to be financed by their own resources. Sometimes it can be 10%, but sometimes 25%. That means that you have of your own equity 250K. So, but when you will scale that up to 10,000 customers, a lot of capital is needed, and the leasing funding lines are limited. They are not high as the sky. And also working capital should be financed. So let's say still the example of bundles, they are still struggling to, let's say, scale their business due to not scalable financing capacity. Yes. So, and let's say you have, beside that, you have some other, let's say, roadblocks. It's what we call a matching issue. When you have, for instance, a leasing rental contract that can go 3, 5 years, sometimes 7 years, or sometimes 10 years, but the contract with the customer, it can be between 3 and 30 years, because the purpose of circular business is to extend the product life, because you manage the life cycle of a product much better. So, and in that way, you extend the life cycle of the product. But finance doesn't run that long, as you got a matching principle, or you have a costing issue, or you have a financing issue. So that's still, we are demanding much more flexible leasing solutions or funding solutions. Also, business to consumers is difficult to finance, and residual values, you have still to see how you can finance it at the end of the contract. Yes, Christian. So another point is, how to implement it in the company, because let's say it's more SMEs who has the financing problem, but let's say big companies has other issues. And let's say Marcel Peters, the founder of Bundles, he worked for a large company but everybody who is working for a large company knows how difficult it is to change, let's say, the big boat from direction. And that's the reason why a lot of SMEs, scale-ups are more successful, but they're struggling with getting size. And the major companies are struggling with getting the transformation done. So let's say a solution for that one is sometimes that major companies are using a greenfield strategy where they start up a new company for the circular business with new management and staff with capacity for a circular business. And in that way, they can make the transition much faster. And the financing of the scaling up of this new company is done by the financial strengths of the mother companies and the guarantees. So let's say my ex-colleagues from Toyota Material Handling Europe, they make a new company and they call it Amplio Rental, and they have a blueprint of a sales and so of a rental company, and they are founding all over Europe new rental companies for an established Swedish company who said, I can do it better, I can better outsource that business model than to do it ourselves. So as you see, for most of the roadblocks, there are solutions. For instance, I've been working 8 years for Toyota Material Handling Europe. The funding was very easy because, let's say, the economic strength of Toyota was very strong, or is very strong. But of course, it's not unlimited neither. So, and we were applying off-balance funding, first via lease plan, ING, and there we had leasing, operational leasing with residual values more than 16%, but we only could do it by what we call a buyback, so it was compliant on the gray level. And then afterwards, Toyota made their own financing company, and then it was found on the international markets. So afterwards we have to put it on the balance due to the new accounting rules for listing Toyota on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. So yeah, if you have a big company, the funding of your circular business model is not so difficult, but it's for them the transition to be made, of course. So yes, Christian, yeah.
Yes, if we take another example of as a service, at Econocom, we are an IT company and we offer a lot of as a service contracts to our customers. And basically in the IT world, you will have some advice on what do you need to buy on hardware, on not hardware, making buffer stocks to comply with service level agreements on delivery time. You will deliver, you will have extension of the lifetime of the equipment through break and fix and to replacement. You will have some support on help desk, on software support, software maintenance, and at the end of the life cycle, you take them back, you recycle what is out of order, and we will put on the market again what is available for selling. And this can be transformed in a price per month. And what is remarkable at our experience is that, for example, many banks are working with this kind of model, which shows that as a service is not only for companies that don't have the money to pay it, but also because the value of the service is much more critical than just the interest rate that is included in the contract. So as a service is really something that has a future for all kinds of customers. And on the funding side, because we are offering the service to the company, but we have also internally the financial capacity to do it, what we do is that we work with partners on the market to get those contracts out of our balance sheet. And we take it out of the balance sheet of the customer, but we take it also out of our balance sheet. And that's the way we grow at Econocom, offering as a service. We avoid the bottlenecks that we have just described. We don't have decreasing revenue because we can sell the equipment to our financial partners. But also for our customers, we do exactly the same. Customers that don't want to get with a very heavy balance sheet, they can sell the equipment for us, and we find a financial solution. So next to the IT, an interesting experience we have had is for something else as a service. In this kind, it's flooring as a service. It's with a Belgian company, the Association of the Flemish municipalities. They renewed their building and they wanted to get rid of old flooring, and they wanted to be sustainable, to show the example to their members, the municipalities. And they issued two tenders, public tenders, one for lighting, and it was won by Signify, and another one with flooring as a service. And Econocom, with some of our partners, we won that one. And what does it mean in practice? Is that, in fact, when you have such a project, of course, there will be an architect coordinating all the design and the work, but there are various cash flows. A first cash flow is that you need to pay the removal of the old flooring. Another one is that you have to pay the new carpet, in this case, that was delivered by the supplier with whom we partnered. Then you need to install this new equipment, new flooring, and that can be done by some company that is specialized in installation, which is maybe not the producer of the equipment. Then we paid the removal of the old one, we paid the new material, we paid the installation. And of course, as it was a 9-year contract, the value for the customer was to be sure that this flooring was kept in a good condition for 9 years. That's the way they save materials, and that's the way they are sustainable. So there is a specialized party which is coming once a year to deep clean the flooring, to avoid that there are bad traces of coffee and food and so on. After the end of the 9 year, there must be someone coming to take over and to remove this flooring, and that one needs to be paid, of course. And at the end, the producer who was delivering at the start is taking back those tiles that are 9 year old, is recycling them, and with the new grinded materials is producing new tiles. So it's a fully circular model. And how was it possible? Because one party, and in that case it was Econocom, is, I would say, the integrator of the whole story. That means that we are managing the cash flows to be paid to each supplier at different times. They are at the start, they are in the process, and they are at the end. We are like a saving bank. We get money from the customer every month, and we keep reserve so that once a year the deep cleaning is done, and at the end the removing is done, and we make sure that it is recycled. So we transform various services from various suppliers and various payments. This one is converted to one invoice per month for a fixed price. The operating risk of the number of cleaning is taken over by the company taking the duty of cleaning, and it's sure for the customer, the association of the Flemish municipalities, that for a fixed price per month, he has a clean carpet for 9 years in a sustainable way, which is recycled at the end. And the only way this is possible is that someone is taking over the coordination, the integration, the management of the flows. And it's not on the balance sheet of the supplier. It's not on the balance sheet of the company installing. It's not on the balance sheet of the company delivering the services, and it's not on the balance sheet of the company taking back. So it's a perfect way because this is exactly scalable. It means that we do this deal, and the next month the supplier can do another deal with another customer with the same partners or with other partners. And like the co-creation is really the model to do this kind of project. And what does it mean in practice? Yes.
Yes, so I agree, Christian. So let's say for a lot of issues and roadblocks, there are solutions. They are not easy, but let's say it's also the role of the part-time CFOs to find the solutions. The issue of putting on balance, because it's not scalable, you can do it with off-balance construction, as you said, let's say operational leasing, let's say long-term rental contracts. You can pay with buyback guarantees, contracts, all those things. So it is a bit more, sometimes there are straightforward operational lease contracts, sometimes with more added value, sometimes it's a bit more financial engineering. Also, the decreasing for sales you can solve, as you said, with sell and rent back operations, so doing the outright sales, and then afterwards also recording the rental, the license fees, sales. You have to check with the auditors if you're compliant with EaaS or GAIP. It's be careful to see that you do it properly. The administration is complex, but you have also solutions for that. For the funding, it's just one solution, a creative funding mix with different combination of different funding methods, equity, leasing, let's say loans, what you call it, crowdfunding. So yeah, you have to be very creative of that. The problem of lack of knowledge, okay, you can follow trainings or consultants. You can also engage a part-time chief sustainable officer. But concerning knowledge, I advise companies, don't work out your circle business model and you spend years in it without immediately see how you will finance it, because sometimes you have to change your circle business model in order to get finance. So the financing part should be at the very first moment when you decide to change to circle business model. And also the management of the life cycle of the product, there you need also more management capacity, people who knows to do it, and also the right IT systems. Yes, Christian.
Indeed, on the financial institution side, what is then the situation? Indeed, we have seen that there are some bottlenecks on the side of the supplier, but there are also some bottlenecks on the financial side. One again is the missing knowledge. We see that basically most financial institutions are working, and they are also obliged to work on the supervisory side with the historic, with the statistics, and with proved risk models, which are based on the past. So going to the future and looking at the future needs a lot of knowledge, but also a lot of work to adjust and to convince the supervision authorities of the new risk and the new solutions for that. Also, at this moment, some tax or legal aspects are not so favorable for as a service, like sometimes the public tenders, or a typical example of legal bottleneck for energy efficiency as a service is the traditional discussion of is the energy saving equipment or is this energy producing equipment a real estate or immovable property, or is it something that is movable? And of course, depending on the qualification, you will have different solutions but also different risk. If a company is investing in as a service to an equipment that is attached to a building, you don't want the owner of the building to come to you and to say that by incorporation of the movable property to the immovable property, you as a supplier, you get rid of your ownership because the ownership is transferred to the building owner. Of course, there are solutions for that, but if we look at least in Belgium, which is our country of experience, we see that most financial institutions have their own legal department looking differently to this type of question. And as everyone is a little bit hesitating and doubting and interpreting, there is a lack of traction on the market. And if we come with a file and a project of energy efficiency as a service, you will not find directly the financial institution which is prepared to do it, because everyone has his own interpretation. And that's one of the subjects we want to improve also as a financier. Values, second-hand values, CO2 impact, improvement of sustainability that needs to be measured, and sometimes the tools are not so clear, or for the financier, the project by the company is not clear enough to make it quantified. And if you look and if you listen to the financial institution on the market, they say that there are not enough good projects to be financed in as service models. At this moment, as a service is at the start of the curve, of the growing curve. You need to learn, you need to do it, and a financial institution cannot change its own way of working just for a few projects. So they need scale also on that side to be more fluent. And as I said, the supervisory authorities are looking also to the past and less to the future. So what are the solutions and what are the recommendations? First, accelerate. Of course, everyone has now listened to the last reports that were published by the Intergovernmental Working Group on Climate Change. Really, there is a sense of urgency, and from 2025, really trends have to go down if you want to achieve the 2030 and the 2050 targets for climate. So we don't have years and years to think about it. We need really now to work on it and to change. We have also to scale up those projects on the financing side. This means at the moment we have a lot of small projects, many starters or small companies trying and getting by error and corrections. But really, all bigger companies need to change the way and to accelerate with good projects. And if there are more projects, there will be more appetite also on the financing side. The good point is that the European Union is pushing very hard to change the way the European Union is sustainable and to improve their sustainability. And the European Union has published a lot of directives to reorient capital flows and capital investments to sustainable projects. And that has an enormous impact on the companies, and that has an enormous impact on the banks and financial institutions. I would just mention 3 of those initiatives. One is about the way financing vehicles and investment vehicles need to disclose which projects they are financing. The other one is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD, which is compulsory from 2024 for listed companies. So you see now a lot of tractions from all big listed companies. They want to show that they are going in the right direction, and they are increasing projects also as a service project to show that they are doing something and they are improving the situations. And of course, the EU taxonomy, which is making the difference between the projects that are contributing positively, the projects that are contributing negatively to the climate, and the one that does not hurt, but does not significantly improve. That by those 6 objectives, and in those 6 objectives, 2 are very important, which is the climate transition and the circular economy. The criteria now to make something sustainable are more clear, and that helps, of course, the scalability for companies and scalability for financial players. For example, what are financial players in Belgium doing? There is a working group created by a government called Vlaanderen Circulaire, which is the government of the Flanders, which is responsible for circularity and climate change. They had last year a working group with KPMG and the Association of the Financial Institutions in Belgium. And basically, I just come to the conclusions, but they say, first, we need to expand the type of offerings which are more dedicated to circular projects. And one of the key messages is indeed something we've already mentioned, is that there is no single silver bullet to finance. There will be a combination of financial solutions, which is a part of equity, a part of external financing, a part of off-balance financing, and something which is also more targeted on circular. And the second work that has to be done, and that has to be done on a shared basis with all financial institutions involved, is that we have to stop with everyone evaluating linear risk in a certain way, circular risk in another way, but all financial institutions on the market should have a kind of consensus on the way the linear economy is taking risk on the market and on the way the circular economy is providing solutions, but also maybe have some risk. And there must be a consistent view on which are the quantified risk and which are the mitigators to those risks to help access on the financing. And of course, if we want to go through those 2 projects, which are on several years, there must be a good governance and monitor progress and monitor KPIs. The same kind of work was done in the Netherlands. Sorry, the other way around. In the Netherlands, indeed, they come also to 5 target projects to be done between financing companies. And basically, we come to the same conclusion, which is an improved risk assessment of linear and circular risk to include circular metrics and measurements. Also, something interesting is that the financial companies should put some budget for what they call landmark deals, that are typical learning by doing deals, in which maybe you make losses, but at least you learn, and each financial institution should start working on concrete projects, maybe make mistakes, but they make a budget for those mistakes, which is clear and managed. And at the end, they have learned something, and that will help for the following deals. Indeed, also optimize and extend the financing offerings and the co-creation with equity, with mezzanine, with credit insurance, with impact financiers that are specialized in circular and sustainable financing. And as an example, also, the Belgian Leasing Association has published in 2021 a charter in favor of the financing of the circular economy. And there we put some criteria to make it clear and more transparent for companies, that they know at least which criteria they should meet to be fundable. And one is on the duration side. As we are speaking about asset-based financing, there must be some assets for, of course, so it needs a term of at least 2 or 3 years. But they say, and there is a consensus on the market, that 10 years for non-real estate asset financing is a kind of duration that is good. That is, it's difficult to go longer than 10 years, except, for example, for buildings, on which if you improve the isolation of the building, of course, it can be funded on longer years. But for movable property like equipment, energy, solar panels, and this kind of thing, 10 years is something that you can fund on the market.
Christian,
Also, yes.
Sorry, Just to interrupt, I think we're not seeing your slide. Could you?
Sorry.
I'm assuming it's not my doing. Maybe Dirk could confirm.
Maybe this one.
I see the slide.
Again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I just come back on that slide. So establish criteria, have a commitment from the supplier. It's a three-party organization by which the financing company is putting money on the table, but they want to be sure that the supplier is committed. And in fact, as a service model, of course, the supplier is committed because he has put some design, some production, which is sustainable, is providing lifetime extension, is putting modularity so that you can upgrade, is taking residual value, is ensuring second life. So by combining financing and technical expertise, you can do it. And basically, on the leasing side, there will be three ways to do it. Either you finance the supplier and is subleasing or putting at disposal of as a service to its customer. Either the financing institution is contracting with the customer, or you do a portfolio financing. And what does it mean in practice? Sorry. Also, you have to identify risk. There are three types of risk in this as a service model. One is the credit risk. On who is the credit risk taken? Is it on the supplier? Is it on the customer? There are operating risk. You need to make sure that the equipment is working. Of course, the customer, if it's not working, will have the trend to stop payments. So it must be clear who is taking the risk of stopped payments. In the pay-per-use model, there is the risk that the asset is not used. So of course, in that case, there is no money coming in. So who is taking the risk of that? And also the residual value, if the first contract as a service is covering like 80% of the equipment, who is taking the risk of the last 20%? Is it the supplier? Is it the financier? Is it a third party which can put a guarantee? Identify and manage the gains in the circular model. I've also spoken about it. Something the financing companies insist is the quality of the communication and preparation of the files. Some companies which are coming with sustainable projects, they say, I have an as a service, and because it's as a service, it's sustainable. Just because that's not exactly the good argument. You have to have a business case with a good quality, with a good service, with a good stream, with a profitability, and of course it's because it's generating cash flows over the future that there will be a financier coming in the train. Just because it's qualified as a service, of course, is not. And the sector has taken some commitments to train its personnel, and there are courses organized by learning by doing, and we take participation to this kind of project, like the Agoria Efficiency as a Service, like a learning curve, the Vlaanderen Circulaire and KPMG project. We have already spoken about it. And we help also remove some obstacles, like sometimes the VAT or legal, like the discussion movable, immovable. Basically, two structures on the leasing side. One is you have a leasing company taking risk on the supplier, but the supplier can sell the equipment to the lessor and get the money immediately. And then the supplier is getting the as a service and the invoicing to the customer. That's one way of doing it. And at the end, in fact, the leasing company is being the owner of the asset during the as a service duration. So for 5 years, 10 years, the ownership, the legal ownership is on the lessor, and the balance sheet of the supplier is easier. Or you have the other way around, where the supplier is selling to the lessor and the lessor is invoicing the customer while the supplier is performing the risk. What we see in practice, and it's a debate, we see some suppliers do not have a problem with splitting the invoicing or splitting responsibilities and splitting contracts. Some suppliers like to do it like a single point of invoicing, and they want to invoice themselves. and getting all contacts with customers. I would say it's depending a little bit by market to market, but again, as a company, as a supplier, look critically to what is really your added value. Is your added value invoicing? Probably not. Your added value is providing the service, and you can explain to your customer that the invoicing is coming from someone else. I will not go into much detail of this one because we have already spoken about it, and I invite you after the meeting when you will receive the slides to have a deeper look. But this basically is a matrix comparing three situations. One is what's happening when you have a sales model on your turnover, on your billing process, on your cash collection, on your cash position. What is the as a service consequence if you do it all by yourself? Dirk spoke about Toyota. Toyota is a big company. They are equipped to do it by themselves, taking the risk of residual value, taking the risk of invoicing, taking the risk on suppliers, on customers. But no, not all suppliers are able to do it. And look critically, if you are a supplier, which are the key points? Is it your turnover? Is it your margin? Is it your ERP system? And case by case, you can decide to have an outsourcing and a partnership with a company which is specialized in taking ownership and taking residual value risk and taking credit risk. That's those aspects: revenue, billing, cash collection, debt monitoring, cash position, and the same with credit risk on your customer. Do you want to take it yourself or do you want to outsource? It can be outsourced to a leasing company. It can be outsourced to a factoring company. It can be outsourced to a credit insurance. Your balance sheets, we have also spoken about it. On the legal side, of course, it's very different. If you have a single, simple sale contract, by which basically you offer a guarantee for 2 years or 5 years, but all problems are to be argued by the customer because he has paid you at the start. So if he's not happy, he has already paid and you have to solve the problems. But in an as a service contract, of course, if the customer is not happy, maybe he will stop paying. And what's happening in that case? Who is doing what? How is the contract written? That's really the key in as a service model, is to define what's happening if the customer is not happy. And indeed, how do you manage disputes? Do you have, I would say, mediation, escalation, solving process? That's the way an as a service model has to be solved in case of dispute. You don't step to the court if something is not right. You really find a solution in common agreement between customers. But it needs to be clear for the financier what's happening in case of dispute. He wants the money to keep coming back, and maybe the customer has to pay even he's not happy, or the supplier has to take some kind of guarantee and to give guarantee because the money is not coming and is covering the stream of the financier. Maybe one last point is that to help assessing risk and opportunities of sustainable model, there was a project 2 years ago with Vlaanderen Circulaire, some of the financial players and Econocom. We have developed a tool which is called C-Evaluator, which is looking at opportunities and risk, and which is based on preparing files for an entrepreneur and getting the right question asked by the financier. So it's a balanced approach. We've tried to kind of good win-win tool for which by working on it and by questions and answers, the file is well prepared. You will find here on the slides the reference. You can have a look. It exists in three languages. Some lessons learned for SuccessFactors to help financing. First, don't come to as a service model for assets that are not known on the market. So put as a service for something for which there is a proven working experience, repair experience, upgrade experience, which is provable. Second criteria, of course, there is a minimum quality of credit, which is the current financial situation, but also a reliable and trustable credit business plan. And our experience is as a service, it's easier to find and to find financing for B2B or B2B2C than directly for B2C, because financing individuals is much more difficult, and it's a business by itself, which is consumer credit, and not all countries, not all banks can do consumer financing because there are very specific rules. You will be in a better position to finance if you go to movable property than to immovable property, and this discussion about incorporation in the building. In the services, prove that there is a low operating risk. So there are simple services, there are more complex services, but prove by experience, by statistics and so on, that there is a low operating risk. The financier will not like to have a very broad volatility in the quality of the risk and a volatility of negative consequences. So if you are a supplier, show exactly what are the bands of volatility in your quality and the consequences of that. Duration, a preferred duration for equipment will be between 5 and 9 years. That can be balanced with the technical life. When the technical life is longer, maybe you can make a first 10 years contract, and after 5 years you start again for 10 years. That's the way it can be solved. And also co-creation with clear roles and responsibilities.
Christian?
It's my last slide.
I just wanted to ask you if you could wrap up. Perfect. So
yes. Second hand can be financed when well documented. Prepare well your credit request. Fixed and variable fees can be done. Sufficient equity to reduce the risk. Do not finance everything on your balance sheet, because if you start with loans, you will get bottlenecks and you will stop your scalability. And of course, the residual value is something very important. When you have as a service contract, don't try to get 100% of the assets paid by the first user, because normally in sustainable projects, there will be a second life and a third life. So you will also have to think about which amount of residual value and how do we finance residual value. If you want to wrap up, I skip those ones. Wrap up. There are difficulties, but it's possible. It's a little bit more complex to finance and as a service, but there are solutions. And think about what you can do yourself and what you need help for third parties. And don't try to do everything on your balance sheet, because if you start with balance sheet, there will be a bottleneck, and you have really to think about off-balance sheet solutions. Thank you for your attention. We are prepared for questions and very happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Christy and Dirk, for the very, very interesting webinar, I think, for me and also for the audience. Looking at the time, I would propose to park the Q&A for the end of the webinar, and now give the floor to our other two speakers. So starting with Wouter and then with Sam, and then we can jump into the panel discussion and subsequently answer the remaining questions that are there. So I would want to give the floor now to Wouter.
Yes, thank you. Let me share my screen. Yes, is it visible?
Yes.
Put it on the big one. So thank you for having me. What I will do is give a very short introduction about how we deal with light as a service, as an example, and also some view on what is needed for that, as well as what is the environmental impact. One question: is it on full screen now or not? The presentation. I think now it is, right?
Yep.
Okay. Short introduction of myself, so already done by Arno. So my name is Wouter de Wolf, marketing manager within Signify. Maybe Signify is not known by everyone. It's the old lighting department of Philips, Philips Lighting, so separated from Philips 5 years ago. Or products are still branded as Philips, so everything you buy in terms of lighting from Signify is Philips branded. And next to that, we have also a growing part of our business that looks at making things smart, building smarter, and all the software and sensors in that is branded as Interact. Also maybe good to mention here is that we are a carbon neutral company since 2020 and still the largest lighting company in the world. So when it comes to light as a service, I think we saw quite some different options presented by Christian and by Dirk, things to make decisions about, I would say. The way we did it is what you see here is that we offer a full hassle-free service. So beginning with planning and designing a lighting solution for a building, could be retail, could be office, anywhere where lighting is needed. Build it, install it, operate it throughout the life period of 5, 10, or even more years, and also maintain and optimize throughout that lifetime. So one of the key things there is indeed that you offer it as a full hassle-free service, so the customer doesn't have to do anything, and you offer the light for that period and everything with it. Secondly, and that's an important one, didn't mention it already, but one of the key things in our solution is that we offer performance indicators, so clear KPIs on the performance of our offering throughout the year. So that is at least on 3 topics. So one is energy, so how much energy is used throughout that lifetime. Next to that, light levels, which is more or less the quality KPI for lighting. So how much light do you need in that building? And that's then being taken care of. And the last one, fortunately, products don't break down that often, so we don't have that many defects. But if that happens, there's an agreement on the uptime. So how fast are you repairing or replacing lighting when there is a defect? Last part on financing, of course, the key topic of this session. On financing, we also choose for doing that with a couple of partners, different partners with whom we can finance or solutions, being mainly banks. And yeah, all the benefits of a lot of benefits as a supplier are mentioned to do that, not on your own balance sheet and within a bank or another financial supplier. One other key element for us to do it is also when it comes to capability building. So assessing risk, determining the interest rate for the solution, etc. Real financial capabilities. And we made the decision not to build that within our own company, but use that with the financial partners we are working with. One of the key things, because we started, I think now more than 7 years ago with the first project Light as a Service in Amsterdam at the airport, Schiphol. And I've seen quite some proposals. Fortunately, a lot of them won, but also a lot of them lost. And also from losing proposals, you get more insights about what is really needed. And that's basically what you see on this slide. So when we talk about customer benefits in the end, what is the customer having as a result of choosing the offering Light as a Service, is that first of all, there's a lower energy consumption, especially when you go to from conventional to LED technologies. It's a reduction of 50% of energy usage, at least. Also carbon footprint reduction of the same amount. And if you go for a smart system, it can also go to even 70 or 80%. So that's an important driver, but also more the use of materials, and that's where the circular economy comes in, is one of the benefits you can get out of this business model. Next to that, of course, the latest lighting installation and then immediately a saving on the energy cost. Actually, that's also the case when you don't go for a lease, but just for an investment in lighting. But of course, they are part of the full benefit of going for lease. And then the free ones that are also very important is, first of all, the customer should be interested in that hassle-free based on the guaranteed lighting performance solutions, so that he doesn't have any risk and any things to do when it comes to the service of the lighting. Of course, the benefit of no investment there, and instead of that, the monthly payment or yearly payment that Christian also showed as a solution with that has a benefit. And lastly, and then you come really close to the circular economy, end of life, you can have the discussion about, okay, what to do? Do we extend it after 10 years? The technical lifetime is still okay. We extend the service model, or we upgrade, or we partly upgrade, or we retrieve it, and we either look for a second life of the luminaires, or we go for the optimal recycling. One of the key insights, I think, based on all the experience now, is that if a customer is interested in most of these benefits, then you have an interesting customer for light as a service, or for as a service, also for other products, of course. If they are not too much or only in one thing interested, then the key question is there a better solution? Is there another solution? Because then you often see that they are still showing interest, but in the end they won't go through it. So we really are becoming more sharp on what are the type of customers that are really interested in light as a service, and scaling it with that insights. Then on the last topic, is it always more sustainable? I think also Christian already mentioned that topic. The way we see it is that light as a service is the most advanced and most circular business model. The two of three key elements in that. First of all, through our lifetime services we offer, we know exactly what happens to our luminaires, but also we can optimize throughout the lifetime. Something that a lot of producing companies have is that they are not there per se end of life, but with an light as a service, you are there in the end of the contract after 10-15 years, and you can discuss indeed, are we extending, upgrading, or retrieving the lighting infrastructure. And I think the most important one is the financial one, is where you have also the right financial incentives to come with a better sustainable solution, a product that can be repaired, a product that has a longer lifetime, a product that is better recyclable, is easily upgraded. But that is also the key thing we also find out, is that we see quite some as a service models in the market, but if you don't do improvements on your product, so if you don't improve on those topics of your products, serviceability, repairability, recyclability, then it is not enabling a more sustainable future. And that still happens. So if your product stays the same and you offer it as a service, and also the end of life is still the same as you had without that service, there's no environmental improvement. So one of the key things we learned is this is the best model to is an enabler for those solutions, but in the end it is about also creating the products that are more sustainable and green. So I think that's a short introduction of our proposition, and also the way we look at it when it comes to improving the sustainability of the product.
Thank you, Wouter. Very, very insightful hearing your lessons learned. I will just share my screen in order for Sam to provide his presentation. If Wouter could stop sharing his screen, I could take over. Yeah, excellent.
Okay, I'll just wait for the screen to come up. But yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your patience. I'm conscious of time, so I'll try and be relatively speedy so we leave more time for the Q&A. Maybe to just start very quickly with an introduction to Societe Generale Equipment Finance. We are the equipment finance, asset finance arm of Societe Generale. We're organized across 4 market verticals, and our legacy really is in our activities in the transport and industrial sector. The healthcare and green energy sector is certainly the most nascent area of the business, but also the area where there is a huge amount of interest in developing our activities, and that's of course due to the intrinsic link to positive impact and the EU taxonomy definition for sustainable activities. And with regards to our geographic footprint, we have local entities in 21 countries, but we're also represented through cooperation agreements with local banks in other markets such as Australia, Poland, and the Nordics. So if we just go to the next slide. Yeah. So in terms of what we do, we're a B2B business. We have various origination channels, be it vendor, dealer, or even direct to customer. And our legacy is essentially an asset finance leasing business. You can see a list of the kind of traditional financial products on the right-hand side there. And I think, Christian alluded to this earlier on around maybe some of the accounting benefits of, operating leases being impacted by obviously the new IFRS 16 accounting rules, requiring all leased assets to now be capitalized on the balance sheets of the lessees. And that's obviously sparked quite a few interesting activities within lessors. So when working with partners and OEMs, what we really try and do is integrate the financing within their sales process. So instead of being the bank that is approached for financing right at the very end, we try and work with our partners, and we try and integrate ourselves into the sales process and help educate the salespeople how they position in the context of this particular conversation, as a service propositions to customers, for example. So now if we go on to the next slide, please. So I think I really like this slide, and I think it's helpful to look at this because when we talk about as a service, I think we need to think of it as something that exists on a bit of a spectrum. And there are maybe two parameters that we can think about. I think one of those is to think about how result orientated the contracting model is, and then the other factor relates to the mix of products or services. Is this the provision of a product only, or is this the provision of services only? And quite often it'll be a mixture of both. And the concept of where you have an offer where customers are only paying based on outcomes or performance doesn't really lend itself very well to the business model of financing capital assets with hell or high water payments. And I think today that's maybe the reason why we see a lot of as a service models as kind of embedded lease models, essentially, where you have lease terms that are embedded within a broader service or supply contract. I think there are other factors that need to be balanced when we think about what type of as a service proposition are we building, and some of that will depend on obviously the competencies and possibilities of the manufacturer or service provider, and also to match your as a service proposition with the demands of the client. Other factors that you might think about would be the pricing model that's adopted by the business that is planning to offer an as a service model, and maybe also the kind of the budgetary, accounting and balance sheet impact for both the end client and for the service provider, of course. And it goes without saying, as you progress to the kind of the right hand side of this chart, from a funder's perspective, there's an increased risk consideration in kind of financing those models. So your risk mitigation strategies become a little bit more complex as you progress further to the right hand side there. If you go to the next slide here. So again, I think without meaning to kind of maybe repeat some of what has already been said, there are various different financial structures that can be used to enable a servitization model of a vendor or service provider. So I wanted to maybe share this practical example, and I'll try and keep it very basic, noting that when we had the poll earlier on, this was quite an unfamiliar topic for people in this call. So it maybe pays to compare the two. So on the left-hand side, I'd describe you have a very basic kind of leasing model where it's just the financier, the equipment finance company, providing a lease for equipment, and there's a separate maintenance supply contract being provided by the service provider, and that is I would say the kind of the legacy business. I mean, it's still business that a lot of the asset finance companies are doing, but I think what seeing more of is I would say more added value proposition. What I would add is that the big trend that we see is this kind of move away from situations where the customers have all of the kind of the burden and the risk associated with ownership of equipment, and they're moving away from equipment ownership to usage-based models. So they don't have that. They don't have those kind of burdens associated with ownership. What we're also seeing, I think, is the inclusion of more advanced services. So not just on-site maintenance, but training, consultancy, the inclusion of performance and service guarantees, especially when it comes into the world of energy, and asset lifecycle management services, which links to some of the kind of circular discussions that we've been having. I would also add, from a service provider or vendor's point of view, or manufacturer's point of view, there are clearly kind of some big financial drivers for increasing kind of the provision of services. I think if you take an example, the market size for services for a lot of industrial products during the useful lifetime of the product itself can be kind of 5 to 10 times higher than that of the initial product sale. So there's a huge amount of additional revenue and income that can be generated by entities that choose to go down the as a service route. So on the left-hand side, we have this kind of traditional asset finance model. On the right-hand side, the schematic that I'm trying to demonstrate pertains to an assignment model, and we see this quite a lot in our business across multiple countries. So the form of contract between the vendor and the client could be some form of embedded lease, a managed service contract, or a hybrid of the two, maybe. But essentially, what we aim to do is monetize the receivables in those contracts in an efficient manner, enable the vendor to maintain the kind of the interface with the client, and also help the vendor kind of de-risk the debtor risk. Because manufacturers and service providers, they're not experts in taking credit risk on customers over 5, 7, or 10 years. So this assignment model is not the only model that we employ to enable servitized offers of our partners, but I wanted to share that as maybe just a quick practical example. If we just go to the next slide. Again, just to highlight some examples, practical examples from the market. We had Ruta earlier talking about Signify lighting as a service, and there are plenty of other examples, but I've included one that relates to the energy space, which Société Générale have marketed recently around their activities with Cesesco, and again using a financial model similar to the schematic that I demonstrated on the previous page. And on the last slide, I think the final comment I would make was also the kind of the link back to circularity. There is a very strong link between asset finance, servitization, and circularity. I think there are lots of ecological benefits that you drive, obviously, when you have a model that helps to prolong the life of assets, but it's also about the incentives that you drive for the different stakeholders. When you have companies that are selling on performance or outcomes, then they're very highly incentivized to ensure that the equipment that they manufacture and produce and supply works and continues to work and continues to operate, and that has obviously ecological benefits as well. So I think I'm conscious that we've already reached 5:30 in Central European time, so I'll stop there. But thank you for your time.
Many thanks, Sam and Wouter and Christian and Dirk, for your sharing of experiences this afternoon. I think it's super valuable for the audience. I do indeed. We are on time with the webinar, but maybe I'll just shoot one question to each one of you, and for the audience that has a little bit of time to run over time, good, and then we'll cut the webinar in 5 minutes. Is that okay, Arnaud, with you? Super. All right. So the first question is for you, Sam. Regarding funding, like what do you see are the roadblocks in scaling this, and what are the funding issues that you see on the market?
I mean, when it comes to kind of servitized model, a lot of it comes down to you know, the nature of services that are being provided in the contract that's being financed, and the performance risk issues that might create for the finance party. So I think performance risk is the biggest one. How do you quantify that level of performance risk? How do you manage it? What ability do you have to substitute services of the vendor if there's an insolvency event of the vendor and you need to bring someone else to deliver the services under the contract that's being delivered to the customer? So I think that the big issue is performance, and that's maybe compounded by another issue, which is that a lot of the more agile companies are smaller. So you have these smaller companies that are aiming for these kind of servitized models, but due to the nature of the size of their businesses, it's difficult sometimes for the bank to kind of manage that performance risk issue. So I think that for me is probably the key one.
Super, many thanks, Sam. And next question is for you, Wouter. It's a bit connected to performance, but indirectly, it's what are some of the most important contract clauses you think are needed in contracts also for those to be easily financed? Easily in brackets.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I think what is indeed important is what are the KPIs throughout the lifetime. I think a second one that is important as well is whenever there's a change of ownership, so the building is going to another owner, how to deal with that? Is there a clause to pay off the full model or not? So that's, I think, an important one to add. And I think the third one that is also important, what are you actually doing end of life? How do you define the residual value? What's your agreement on how to put that into the contract? Yeah, from my perspective, that are the three important points to be clear on and to put into your contract.
Super, many thanks, Wouter. And actually, I'll loop that question as well to Sam and Christian and Dirk, like from your side as well as a financier. What are the clauses that typically you really like to see in a contract? Maybe Sam, you go first.
Well, there are two contracts, right? Because there's the client contract, and then there's the contract between the service provider and the bank.
Yes.
I think the point was raised around. The point was raised around, you know, what kind of dispute resolution steps do the parties agree to take? So I think that's probably the key one in terms of the agreement between the financier and the partner that's delivering an as a service model. And then in respect of the client contract, it really it's quite a difficult one to answer. I think the big one in the asset finance industry is the kind of conditionality of the payments, right? I mean, what conditions are attached to that payment, and what impact does that have on the fundability of that contract? And you know, what we see a lot of at the moment is this kind of demand, obviously from clients, especially in the energy space, to have this kind of conditionality built into the payments, where there are, you know, service penalties that are payable or rebates that should be paid if the performance or outcome that is being promised isn't delivered. So I think the conditionality of the payments is the most important one. From the financier's point of view, there's obviously a kind of a need to have that payment as robust as possible, but that needs to be balanced with the demands of the client.
Super, many thanks, Sam. And Christian and Dirk, on your side, any comments on that one?
Yes, on my side, I fully agree with what was said by Wouter and Sam. indeed, it must be clear when money is on the table for an asset that even if the customer is not happy, it must be clear that the asset is there, so someone has to pay the asset, and then it's a cascade of if the customer is not paying, then at least the supplier has to pay. But then we come to indeed the credit valuation of the supplier also, and indeed in as a service model, when it's a well-established company, it's not so a problem, but when it's a growing one, is that one able to solve the issues and to pay? So all clauses around payments and disputes are really the key, and the definition of the services, the consequences in the SLAs and so on.
Super. And maybe a very last question, and then I give the floor to you, Arno, to conclude the session. Dirk, like if a customer approaches to get a solution finance, typically, how long can a supplier expect this conversation happen before a deal is done with the financier to implement the solution for their clients?
Yeah, when we have to be creative and make a creative funding mix, it can take 3 to 6 months, you know.
Okay.
So it can take time. Yeah, it can take time. So all depends about the quality, the presentation, the performance risk, all the, let's say, the risks and the roadblocks that were exposed here. Yeah, it's okay when the model is simple, straightforward. There is enough equity. When it's a blue chip deal, then it can go fast. But most of circular business models are not such, let's say, straightforward at this moment. So it's still struggling to get financing. That's my experience in daily life.
Yeah. Many thanks, Dirk. Arno, I'm cautious of time. Over to you. We don't hear you. You're on mute.
Apologies. Yeah, so we are already at the end of the session. So I would like to thank each of our speakers very much for the time and shared insights. And also thank you to the audience for your time and the questions raised. So the recording and the slides and the documentation of this webinar will be shared with all webinar participants and registrants, I should say, in the coming days. We would furthermore just like to mention that this event is part of work within the EaaS project, where we aim to build capacity for this model in Belgium, Spain, Netherlands, and Europe. So if you're interested to deploy the model, please reach out to us. We'd be very happy to see if we can support you. And I'm sure the same could be said for today's guest speakers. So with that, I would like to close the webinar. So thank you again, and hope to see you soon.
Many thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.